If the person calling your name sounds exactly like someone you know but feels wrong, do not answer. Just keep walking. This morning at 6:47 a.m., Officer Martinez reported that his radio started echoing his own voice back to him. But the voice was asking questions he hadn't asked yet. The badge on his uniform turned so cold it left frost marks on his shirt. When dispatch tried to reach him, they heard Martinez responding to calls that hadn't come in yet. This message is issued by the Emergency Coordination Center in coordination with the Department of... Look, honestly, after the whole lanky boy invasion last month, I'm not even sure which department is supposed to handle this anymore. Please listen closely and follow the instructions. This is not a drill. We're dealing with what appears to be a massive outbreak of identity theft. But the supernatural kind that makes absolutely no sense and follows a script so predictable, I could probably automate my job at this point. The pattern is always the same. I'm back, unfortunately, and yes, it's me. The same coordinator who had to deal with Steve's Tuesday-only existence and that whole breathing houses situation. Thought we'd get at least a month of normal emergencies, maybe some regular fires or standard burglaries. But no, apparently our region has been designated as the official testing ground for every horror movie concept that someone thought needed a real-world trial run. Starting 72 hours ago, we began receiving reports of people encountering what can only be described as themselves, but wrong. I've been doing this job for 12 years, and I never thought I'd have to issue a warning about the alarming increase in malicious identity mimicry. But here we are, because apparently reality looked at our last crisis and thought, you know, what would be really original? Evil twins, but make it boring. The pattern is always the same. Let me just run through the checklist of incidents because at this point I'm pretty sure someone's just working through a supernatural phenomena for dummies handbook, and we're stuck living through Chapter 7. Doppelgangers and You, a beginner's guide to ruining someone's Tuesday. First incident. Tuesday morning, a woman called to report that she'd met herself getting coffee at the downtown cafe. Not a twin, not a look-alike, herself. Same clothes, same coffee order, same annoying habit of tapping her card reader 3 times before it works. The duplicate was sitting at her usual table, reading the same newspaper, and when the real one approached, the fake one looked up and said, "Oh, good, you're here. I've been waiting." Then it just left. Didn't take the coffee, didn't pay, just walked out like it had somewhere more important to be. Classic doppelganger behavior. Show up, be creepy, leave without explanation. Second incident. Wednesday afternoon, a postal worker found himself delivering mail to his own house while he was home sick. His wife called to report that there were 2 of him, one on the couch with flu symptoms and one at the front door with a package addressed to himself. When she asked the door version what was happening, he said, "I don't know, but I think I'm supposed to be delivering this." The package was empty except for a note that said, "Thanks for the house. I'll take good care of it." The sick version had no memory of leaving bed. Third incident. Thursday evening, a teenager's parents called because their daughter came home from school, but she was also already home from school. Both versions insisted they were the real one. Both had the same memories, same attitude, same inexplicable ability to locate every item of clothing on her bedroom floor. The only difference was that one of them kept saying, "The pattern is always the same," in response to every question, which honestly is becoming this week's equivalent of last month's temporal displacement anxiety. See what I mean? It's like someone found a WikiHow article titled, "How to Create a Supernatural Crisis in 3 Easy Steps," and decided to follow it to the letter. Now we're up to 47 confirmed cases of what our psychology consultant is calling aggressive self-replication, which sounds way more scientific than evil twins are taking over suburbia. But it's basically the same thing. People are encountering versions of themselves that range from slightly off to definitely planning something sinister. And the pattern is so predictable that I've started a bingo card for the incident reports. Let me tell you about the Miller family from Pine Street, because their case really highlights how formulaic this whole thing has become. Mr. Miller came home from work to find himself already home from work, sitting in his chair, watching his shows, eating his dinner. Wife thought it was weird, but not immediately threatening. I mean, if you're going to have an evil twin, at least it's one that does the dishes and doesn't leave socks on the floor. The problem started when both Millers insisted on mowing the lawn at the same time. Neighbors reported seeing two identical men having a very polite argument about proper mowing patterns while both operating identical lawnmowers in the same yard. Mrs. Miller said it was actually kind of efficient until they started mowing in opposite directions and created what she described as a grass-based crop circle that definitely wasn't there before. When she tried to figure out which one was her actual husband, both had the same memories, same terrible jokes, same inexplicable knowledge of where she keeps the good chocolate hidden. The only way she could tell them apart was that one kept saying, "The pattern is always the same," whenever she asked direct questions, and the other one started doing it too after about an hour, like he was learning from the first one. By Thursday, there were 4 Mr. Millers in the house, all insisting they belonged there, all helping with household chores, and all developing the habit of speaking in unison when addressing Mrs. Miller directly. She called our emergency line when they started harmonizing their responses, and she realized they were somehow coordinating without looking at each other. Our response team arrived to find 7 Mr. Millers in the front yard, all mowing different sections of what had apparently become a much larger lawn than physically possible. Officer Rodriguez reported that the duplicates were aggressively helpful and kept offering to help with police work, asking questions about patrol routes and emergency protocols while maintaining perfect eye contact. When Rodriguez tried to arrest one for questioning, all 7 responded simultaneously with, "Which one?" in perfect synchronization. Rodriguez said it was like asking a choir to pick a soloist, except the choir was made of the same person and they all wanted to be arrested together as a group activity. Mrs. Miller, meanwhile, had locked herself in the bedroom and was communicating only through the window. When asked which Miller was her real husband, she said, "Honestly, they're all better behaved than the original. But the coordinated lawn care is getting creepy, and I'm pretty sure my grocery budget can't support feeding 7 of him." Here's where it gets properly weird, though. We sent in a specialist team to sort out the Miller situation, but when they arrived, the duplicates had already organized themselves into what appeared to be a neighborhood watch program. They'd created a schedule for household maintenance, established a rotation for grocery shopping, and somehow convinced 3 neighbors to participate in what they called optimized residential efficiency planning. The specialist team leader, Dr. Warren, said it was the most polite mass supernatural occurrence she'd ever encountered. The Millers, all of them, offered coffee, asked about the team's work-life balance, and inquired whether anyone needed help with home improvement projects. When Dr. Warren explained they were there to resolve the duplication crisis, the Millers responded with, "Oh, is that what this is?" In perfect unison, then immediately began brainstorming solutions. By the end of the consultation, 3 team members had somehow agreed to weekly lawn care assistance, 2 had scheduled weekend barbecues, and Dr. Warren herself had exchanged phone numbers for what the Millers called community supernatural support networking. She filed a report recommending we just let the Miller situation resolve organically because, quote, "They're actually making the neighborhood better, and I've never seen anyone so enthusiastic about municipal cooperation." But the Miller case is mild compared to what happened at Roosevelt Elementary School. Principal Johnson called Wednesday morning to report that her entire staff had doubled overnight. Not just some of them, all of them. Every teacher, custodian, cafeteria worker, and administrative assistant now existed in pairs. The duplicates had apparently shown up early, prepared lesson plans, and were already teaching classes when the originals arrived. Johnson said the most unsettling part wasn't the supernatural doubling. It was that the duplicates were genuinely better at their jobs. Test scores went up, the cafeteria food improved, and for the first time in 15 years, every maintenance request was handled the same day it was submitted. When Johnson tried to figure out which staff members were real, She discovered that the duplicates had already updated all the employee records to include both versions, filed paperwork for additional parking spaces, and somehow negotiated with the district for expanded health benefits to cover existential identity coverage. The duplicates had actually improved the school's administrative efficiency so much that the district office called to ask if Roosevelt would be willing to share their optimization strategies with other schools. The breaking point came when parents started requesting conferences with both versions of their children's teachers because, according to one parent, Mrs. Henderson number 2 explains math way better than original Mrs. Henderson. But original Mrs. Henderson knows more about my kids' behavioral patterns. The school board is apparently considering keeping both teaching staffs permanently and has asked if other schools can request beneficial duplication services. Now, here's the part that really gets to me. This whole crisis follows such a predictable pattern that I've started categorizing the stages, because apparently that's what we do now instead of solving problems. We document them in neat little phases like we're grading supernatural homework. Stage 1, which I'm calling polite introduction, typically begins between 6 a.m. and 10 a.m., because even evil twins have the courtesy to show up during business hours. During this stage, you'll encounter a version of yourself or someone you know who's just slightly too helpful, too agreeable, or too interested in your daily routine. They'll know things they should know, but they'll care about things they shouldn't care about, like whether you've been getting enough sleep or if you need help organizing your closet. Stage 2 kicks in around day 2 and involves what I've started calling helpful multiplication. The duplicates begin solving problems you didn't know you had. Your evil twin will meal prep for you, update your resume, and somehow convince your landlord to fix that leaky faucet you've been complaining about for months. They're more competent versions of you, which is honestly kind of insulting, but also practically useful. Stage 3 is where things get weird in the way that makes you question whether this is actually a problem or just an extremely strange solution to understaffing issues. The duplicates start networking with each other, forming what appears to be a parallel support system that's somehow more organized than your actual life. They'll coordinate schedules, share resources, and begin implementing efficiency improvements that you never would have thought of yourself. Stage 4, which we've only seen in a few cases, involves what Dr. Warren calls benevolent assimilation. The duplicates don't replace you. They integrate so seamlessly into your life that you start wondering if you actually need them. They handle your least favorite responsibilities, remember appointments you forget, and somehow make your social interactions more pleasant. It's like having a personal assistant who happens to be identical to you and genuinely invested in improving your quality of life. The problem is that by stage 4, most people don't want us to fix the situation. Mrs. Henderson from the school said, and I quote, "My duplicate organized my entire house, learned to cook 5 new recipes, and convinced my mother-in-law to visit less frequently. If you take her away, I'm filing a complaint." Now, for safety instructions, and I want you to really listen to this part because these guidelines are apparently the only thing standing between us and a complete breakdown of individual identity. Not that anyone seems particularly upset about that possibility. First, if you encounter a version of yourself, do not immediately assume it's malicious. Our data shows that 73% of duplicates are actually trying to be helpful, 22% are neutral but confused, and only 5% are actively problematic. The problematic ones usually reveal themselves by trying to convince you to switch lives with them, or by showing up to your job and being suspiciously better at it than you are. If your duplicate starts improving your life without permission, document the changes, but don't panic. We've had multiple cases where people tried to get rid of their duplicates and immediately regretted it when their dishes started piling up again and they remembered why they hate doing laundry. Consider establishing a shared responsibilities agreement before taking any drastic action. Do not attempt to fight your duplicate unless they're actively making your life worse. We learned this lesson the hard way when Jerry from Oak Street tried to physically confront his duplicate over territorial lawn rights. Both Jerrys ended up in the emergency room with identical injuries, and the hospital staff said it was like treating one person who'd somehow injured himself twice simultaneously. The paperwork alone was a nightmare. If you find yourself in a situation where multiple versions of the same person are present, establish clear communication protocols early. The Martinez household now uses a number system and assigned seating arrangements during meals. Mrs. Martinez says it's like managing a sports team where everyone has the same name, but at least the chores get done faster. Here's the important part. If your duplicate starts saying, "The pattern is always the same," in response to questions, that's your cue to call our emergency line immediately. This phrase seems to indicate that the duplicate is becoming aware of the broader duplication phenomenon and may be transitioning into what we're calling meta-consciousness, which sounds academic but basically means they're figuring out that they're part of a pattern, and that never ends well for anyone. Remember what happened to Steve last month? Steve thought he could outsmart obviously supernatural stares and ended up existing only on Tuesdays. Well, yesterday we got a call from Steve's duplicate, who apparently exists Monday through Saturday and wants to coordinate a custody arrangement for Steve's apartment. Even our supernatural crises are having supernatural crises now. The geographical spread is following the same suburban to urban pattern we saw with the breathing houses and the evil children's programming. It started in residential areas where people have predictable routines, moved to local businesses where customer service interactions are formulaic, and now it's reaching municipal buildings where bureaucratic procedures are so repetitive that duplicates can learn them in about 15 minutes. Our dispatcher Jennifer has been dealing with calls from people asking to speak to specific versions of city employees. Apparently, some of the duplicates are better at resolving permit issues, and citizens are requesting them by number. Jennifer said yesterday's calls included, "Can I speak to DMV Agent Johnson number 3? Number 1 was rude, and number 2 doesn't understand the forms, but number 3 actually solved my registration problem." The state sent investigators again, but they left even faster this time when they discovered that our duplicates had already filed all the paperwork for a federal supernatural phenomenon research grant and somehow qualified for emergency municipal efficiency funding. One specialist said our crisis was aggressively self-documenting and recommended we apply for a case study designation because apparently we're now a model for productive paranormal events. Missing persons reports have actually decreased this week because people keep finding additional versions of their missing relatives. Mrs. Patterson called to report that her missing brother showed up at her door, but so did 2 other versions of him, and all 3 claim they've been looking for her for weeks. She's not sure which one went missing originally, but she says family dinners are more interesting now and someone finally fixed her garbage disposal. The university's paranormal research department sent Dr. Matthews back, and she's even more confused than last time. She said our reality is experiencing what she calls beneficial genre confusion. We're stuck in a loop of supernatural events that are supposed to be threatening but keep accidentally improving people's lives. Her recommendation was to let it play out and see if we accidentally solve the housing crisis through benevolent multiplication. Look, I'm going to be straight with you here. We're dealing with supernatural phenomena that forgot to be scary. It's like the universe ordered horror but got customer service instead. And honestly, after dealing with the existential dread of last month's tall, skinny people standing around looking ominous, this is almost refreshing. But here's the thing. Predictable doesn't mean safe, and helpful doesn't mean harmless. Just because your evil twin is better at paying bills doesn't mean you should let them take over your life entirely. We still don't know what happens when stage 4 progresses further, and I really don't want to find out by having to issue warnings about aggressive life optimization or malicious efficiency improvements. The pattern seems to be accelerating again. What used to take days is now happening in hours. Some people are speedrunning through all 4 stages and ending up with fully integrated duplicate support systems before their morning coffee gets cold. It's like everyone's trying to optimize their supernatural experience for maximum convenience, which honestly sounds about right for 2025. Here's your final safety reminder, and please take this seriously even though it sounds like I'm reading from a customer service manual for reality maintenance. If someone who looks exactly like you offers to handle your responsibilities while you relax, establish clear boundaries and expectations before agreeing. Get it in writing if possible, because we've had disputes over duplicate territory rights, and the legal department says these cases are giving them headaches. If multiple versions of yourself start coordinating without your input, maintain some level of oversight. The Morrison household now has 5 versions of Mr. Morrison, and they've formed what appears to be a small business providing lawn care services to the neighborhood. Mrs. Morrison says the income is great, but the house is getting crowded, and she's not sure which one she's actually married to anymore. And most importantly, if the person calling your name sounds exactly like someone you know but feels wrong, do not answer. Just keep walking. We've had too many cases of people following voices that led them into situations where they met themselves coming around corners, and that never ends with just one polite conversation about scheduling conflicts. This broadcast will repeat every hour until the situation resolves, or until we all get so used to having multiple versions of ourselves that we forget this wasn't always normal. The duplication rate is holding steady at about 15 new cases per day, but the complaint rate is actually going down because most people seem to be adapting to their improved personal efficiency levels. Stay safe, stay organized, and remember, just because your life is suddenly running smoother doesn't mean you should stop paying attention to which version of yourself is actually living it. The pattern is always the same, but maybe that's not always a bad thing. This has been your Emergency Coordination Center, reminding you that sometimes the real horror was the customer service improvements we made along the way.